That is not what prepares you to be a dad. I just want to make sure that you have lowered expectations.
No, I've been doing the thing that prepares me to be a dad.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
that's to become a dad, not prepares you to be a dad.
You've been shooting your own ecto cooler. Oh, yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower after Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, the Scourge of Carpathia Venkman.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie should take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. And I want to take a second to say special thanks to everyone who joined us for our Uncle Buck live recording to raise money for the Highland Park Shooting Response Fund. Together, we were able to raise over $1,000 for the Highland Park Shooting Response Fund, thanks to your generosity. If you missed that, you can catch the replay on YouTube, see my face, see Big D's face. Sadly, Ash wasn't there, but we're so glad to have her back tonight. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Gene, tonight is a very, very special evening. And I know I say that a lot, but way back in May of 2021, one of our great listeners, Matt P., he asked us to do a movie I think that we normally would enjoy, the 1989 supernatural comedy Ghostbusters II. But little did he know the importance of this film. This is episode 300 of Shat the Movies.
Wow.
And I'm very excited tonight to I should have done that differently.
Why?
Okay. So I'm excited. Okay, it's true. So I'm very excited tonight to review that for him. Ghostbusters Part 2. And let's see if it holds up.
Well, and Matt wrote in and said, I discovered the podcast right at the beginning of the pandemic, and one of my first episodes I listened to was Ghostbusters. Since it's one of my favorite movies, I was curious what you guys had to say. I can't say I agree with most of it, but you brought up some good points. After binging a bunch of episodes, I decided I needed to hear your thoughts on Ghostbusters 2. I remember seeing it in the theater with a bunch of friends, and the only time I had a similar feeling about a movie immediately afterwards was probably The Phantom Menace. Massive anticipation followed by confusion and slight disappointment. Over the years, I've come to appreciate it a little more, but I think it still ends up about a 2.5 to 3 wipe movie. I'm curious what you all think. Thanks for the many hours of entertainment over the past few years. And that comes from Matt P.
Matt, this is an exceptional commission because a lot of the time we get people who love a movie, they want us to love it too, and there's a lot of pressure there. And other times we get people who know a movie is shit and they want us to shit all over it, and it's very generous for the audience, right? It's fodder. In this case, it's sheerly out of curiosity that you ponied up the money to commission the movie, and I think that takes a very brave kind of person. Ghostbusters 2 is a 1989 supernatural comedy directed and produced by Ivan Reitman and written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. The film stars Bill Murray, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts. It is the sequel to the 1984 film Ghostbusters and the second film in the Ghostbusters franchise. Set 5 years after the events of the first film, the Ghostbusters have been sued and put out of business after destruction caused during their battle with the deity Gozer. When a new paranormal threat emerges, the Ghostbusters reunite to combat it and save the world. With a budget of $40 million, filming took place between November 1988 and March 1989 in New York City and Los Angeles. production was rushed compared to the original film's 13 months shooting schedule. Large sections of the film were scrapped after poorly received test screenings, and new scenes were written and filmed during reshoots between March and April 1989, only 2 months before its release. As the sequel to the then highest grossing comedy film of all time, Ghostbusters 2 was expected to dominate the box office. Instead, Columbia Pictures deemed it a financial and critical failure. Its soundtrack single, On Our Own by Bobby Brown, was a success, spending 20 weeks on the United States music chart. So I was a Ghostbusters junkie as a kid. I watched the first movie. I watched the animated series. I had the Proton Pack, the Ghost Trap, the Ecto-1, all secondhand, but I got them. I even had the comic books, the coloring books. So when this movie hit, it was during the peak of my Ghostbusters hysteria. And to a 9-year-old Gene Lyons, Ghostbusters 2 was so much better than the original Ghostbusters. And now that I know it was designed to be more family friendly and more geared toward kids, that totally makes sense.
I, like you, was a massive Ghostbusters fan. I thought it was one of the coolest things I had ever seen. And it's a movie that I remember from even being like super little. So this is one of those few films that we do where I kind of like can't tell the first time I saw these movies because it feels like they just always existed, right? Like this was always in my memory and it was always something that was a thing. And I do remember when this came out, but I didn't remember the actual movie. I just remember people being really disappointed in it compared to the first one, especially my family. And I remember after we all went to go see it in theaters, my biggest memory is that we came home and watched the original. And I remember my dad being like, no, that was Ghostbusters, right? So I do remember that piece. But until we did this rewatch for the pod, I couldn't remember the differentials between 1 and 2.
I feel like Big D's going to be standing in for your dad tonight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Big D.
I will. So like a lot of times I feel lucky because I feel like I grew up in the sweet spot of the 80s, old enough in the early 80s to remember what was going on, started to get into like my teens towards the end. So I really remember these as being part of my childhood. This is like a golden time. And I remember those special movies that were more than just a film. They were the ones that had like the tie-ins and became a big pop culture event. The one that if you went to camp would be like, okay, everybody, a rainy day, we're getting together and we're going to see E.T. We're going to see Gremlins. We're going to go see Back to the Future. Or Star Wars was right around this time for me. Ghostbusters fit into that. I was 11 when the original one came out. I had the toys. I remember everybody fighting at camp. You'd get a juice box, and some of them were the high C Ghostbusters Ecto Cooler. You would count yourself as it's going to be a good day if you got one of those. The Ghostbusters series, I mean, that's up there with some of my biggest memories as a kid.
Big D, did you know that people still drink Ecto Cooler?
I have seen it, but I thought it was almost like one of those collector's items. Like you could still sometimes get limited edition new Coke or something like that. Is it actually a product that people can buy?
I'm sorry, what is new Coke?
Shut up.
You don't remember New Coke when they changed the formula?
Ash, you do
No.
not. Oh, my goodness.
I don't remember. What the fuck is new Coke?
It's up there with like Crystal Pepsi as the most
I remember Crystal
massive
Pepsi.
soda debacles of the beverage world.
Wow. Well, Ash, let's just say back in the day, Pepsi was doing the Pepsi Challenge and they were losing market share to Coke. Coke was falling behind, actually, for the first time. So Coke decided to change their formula to something that was more sugary, more an RC Pepsi hybrid.
It needed more sugar. That was their thought. It needed more.
It was the taste of a new generation. And needless to say, it was a huge failure. But in the end, it only lasted, I think, 2 or 3 months. People, including my father, were hoarding cases of original Coke. And when the people started, like there was organizations, a grassroots campaign, it turned out to be a great marketing victory for Coke because the original formula was returned, became original Coke, and it kind of cemented them as the leader of the cola industry.
It's like that Dreamland shit. Have y'all had this Coke Dreamland?
It's terrible.
So like I accidentally bought some because I'm cheap and it was on sale. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, look at this. So I thought it was like a collector's like can, like just the can was different. Like Christmas Coke doesn't taste like Christmas. It just got a fucking polar bear on it. So I got the Dreamland Coke and then I took one sip and was like, ugh, it's hideous.
It tastes like somebody went to the state fair. They had a cup of Coke. It had like gotten diluted by the ice a little bit. And then they decided to just store some cotton candy in there. And then you accidentally drank it. It's terrible.
It's awful.
And on that note,
Roll that trailer.
At the stroke of midnight, on New Year's Eve of the last decade of the 20th century, America's largest city is about to pay for the nastiness of its inhabitants. When that day comes, when the slime starts to rise,
the Titanic just arrived.
When ghosts start arriving by the boatload,
We gotta find the guys.
there's only one thing to do.
Sometimes weird things happen. Someone has to deal with it. And who are you gonna call? All right, suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
The superstars of the supernatural are back to nuke the spooks.
Two in the box!
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
Make some time.
Don't put any of those old cheap moves on me.
no.
It's different.
I have all new cheap moves.
Raise your spirits.
If we don't do something by midnight, you will be remembered in history as the man who let New York get sucked down into the 10th level of hell.
And kick some slime.
Looks like a giant Jell-O mold.
I hate Jell-O. Oh, come on. There's always room for Jell-O. Happy New Year!
Hose 'em.
Ghostbusters 2.
You're short?
Rick Moranis and Ernie Hudson in an Ivan Reitman film. Ghostbusters 2.
We're the best! We're the beautiful! We're the only Ghostbusters! We're back!
Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Who you gonna call?
5 years after saving New York City, the Ghostbusters have been sued and barred from investigating the supernatural. Ray now owns an occult bookstore and works a side job alongside Winston as an unpopular children's entertainer. Egon works in a laboratory experimenting with human emotions, and Peter hosts a TV show about psychics. Dana Barrett, Peter's ex-girlfriend, has an infant son named Oscar with her ex-husband and now works at an art museum. After Oscar's baby stroller rolls into a busy intersection, a painting of Vigo the Carpathian comes to life and enslaves Dana's boss, Janos Poha. So normally, I don't really care how I watch a Shat the Movies feature. They're normally from the 80s. They normally look terrible anyway. I could watch it on an iPad. I could watch it on my flat screen. I could watch it on a bus, on a plane, or in the case of Blood In, Blood Out, on a YouTube stream so blurry that Big D has to go out and buy the DVD. But man, seeing Ghostbusters 2 in ultra high definition, totally worth it. It made me want to go back and rewatch Ghostbusters in ultra high definition. The colors are so vivid, and you just pick up little details that make the movie more enjoyable. The proton pack construction, the sliminess of the slime, Sigourney Weaver's perfect jawline, the streets of New York in the 80s. It's a thing of beauty. And when the Ecto-1 first rolls on the scene in this movie, my heart felt like it was doing a little flip.
I was surprised by how clever the whole they got sued plot line actually was for them. And I had no idea that this is where so many movies stole what would eventually be this idea for their films, especially sequels, for it to come from. And it makes sense. If these nerds with proton packs bust up my apartment, I'd want them to fucking pay for it. I would sue them in small claims court in Texas up to $10,000. And especially because you know for a fact that no insurance company is going to be like, oh, well, ectoplasm or slime, that's coverable. We had trouble during the hurricane getting them to cover a broken window. So they're not going to cover it. So I was very pleased to see how smart of a start it was. And then add that to the obvious thing that each one is doing in place of their ghostbusting, the psychic TV show I personally thought worked best. I was really, I had high hopes when this movie started because I thought it was a cute start.
This start might be smart or cute, but nothing is happening. Aside from a runaway stroller, the movie does absolutely nothing for the first 20 minutes. It's like the movie makers thought, well, it's Ghostbusters. You like Ghostbusters, right? Well, here are Ghostbusters. They're talking and they're moving on your screen. Thanks for the $4. Exit through the gift shop.
Yeah, but that 20 minutes feels like it's 5 seconds. They give us the opening 5 years later. There is no explanation. It's boom. Slime, you're into New York, you're seeing slime, and the movie is trying to shove the 5 years of exposition into 30 seconds. Okay, we're starting off fast. Okay, here, everybody get ready. Everybody get in the treadmill. We haven't seen the Ghostbusters in a while. Where's Ray? Venkman is kind of not in the group anymore. Dana is now divorced. The marriage has ended. The city and every agency has sued them, like you said, Ash. They're doing birthday parties. Kids hate them. Boom, here's where we are.
And why do these kids not like the Ghostbusters? We see a scene where Winston and Ray, they show up at the party and the kids are all bummed out. They wanted He-Man or some shit. Are the kids reading newspapers and following lawsuits?
I think it's like Ash said. Probably the parents had a house destroyed, whatever. They'd heard their parents saying, these fucking Ghostbusters, they destroyed my life. It reminds me, Ash, of The Boys. This is a big thing in The Boys where superheroes being held accountable for destructions, for death. I'm sure that the kids, it's not cool to be a Ghostbuster.
Which is a direct ripoff, by the way, of The Incredibles, just saying. And The Incredibles did it better than The Boys did. But The Incredibles stole it first from the Ghostbusters. But I agree with you, Gene. I was sitting there going like, that would be badass to have a Ghostbuster come to my party. The only thing I'd be disappointed is that they wouldn't release a ghost from one of their little packs.
I remember when the Dare cops would come to my school and they'd have like just a normal ass squad car.
Yeah.
I'd be like, holy shit, it's police with a squad car. I would piss my pants with excitement. I would be fucking stoked if the Ghostbusters showed up in my living room with real proton packs. These aren't like replicas. This is the real fucking deal.
Well, and you know there's got to be a package, because if any of you out there have ever booked a fucking birthday party, there are like 3 packages that you can choose. So like package 1, they come in and talk to the kids. Package 2, they get to like touch their proton packs. And package 3, you can shoot the proton packs. They let people pay enough. They let those kids shoot the packs. Be awesome.
These scientists are showing up with a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
On their backs at a kid's party. You don't know if they're leaking. You know that they haven't had the best track record. So it's questionable for the parents to let them do that. But Ash, I have to defend the comic nerd out there who's going to write in. The Boys beat The Incredibles by about 6 years. The comic book came out in late 2006.
I just realized 2000 to 2019 is 1 year for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was college and then I'm here. That's all I remember.
Yeah. There's some shit that happened in the middle.
Wiki could have told me that it was like maybe 1997. I would have believed it. It could have told me it was 2006. Who knows?
Just like I believed the internet when it told me that Angelica Houston had D-cup breasts. My bad.
But I do want to talk about Dana here. We're reintroduced to her. She's the focus of Gene's first 20 minutes. She's going to be what ties the two movies together. But she is an awful, awful mother. She's slightly better than Peter Pan that we saw, where the baby carriage rolls away. Here, at least, Dana notices it's gone. She tries to chase it down. Does she baby-proof her apartment? She's having these supernatural events. No, she does nothing. But here's a bigger plot question. I understand this film was rushed. We got to kind of mash the two movies together and have them make sense, right? Dana was a professional, she was a concert cellist, I believe, in the beginning.
Correct.
How does that qualify her now to restore priceless works of art? This is like her fallback. This career is like, I'm just going to take a part-time job, while I'm raising Oscar. I don't know how exactly that happens, but the fact that she is not paying too much attention to this poor child and the development of her character, it just feels so rushed. You can feel they just said, we need to get this movie out.
It's the fucking 80s. Nothing was baby-proofed. My parents did not baby-proof for us. I remember riding in the front seat when I was 4 years old. And now they've got to be 100 pounds before you can get them out of those boosters. I think we've gotten a little crazy with the baby-proofing. We gotten a little helicopter mom here. And there's this thing I want to introduce you to, Big D. There was this big fight between the helicopter parents, right? The ones that baby-proof everything and make sure their kids aren't rolling away in strollers at all times. And then you've got the other kids that are sitterfied. And it's they sit and they watch the kids, but they let them be their own people. And it's a return to the parenting of the 80s, because everything is showing that the parenting of today is fucking up kids. So I think Dana is a great mom. She's a working mom. Yes, her career change may be a bit unrealistic, but maybe she was working on a Master of Arts while she was in the symphony. You don't know.
Well, I should clarify. When baby-proof, I mean if you live in a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, put a screen over the windows or screw them down. Clapton lost his son this way. You've seen all the YouTube videos with the babies in China. This shit happens. Kids fall out of windows all the time.
I love that we just had like the biggest pop culture reference to a child that died in the late 80s.
Yeah,
within like the first 5 minutes.
It's about his son falling out a window in New York. That shit happens.
Big D, you have to understand that Ash and I are of an age where you need to give us a first name with Clapton. You can't just throw Clapton out there. We're like, oh, Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, of course.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
I can't believe you guys are debating the details here on Dana. This woman saw a tub of pink slime try to fucking eat her baby, and her solution was to go out to dinner the very next night.
Exactly.
I'm not even super mom. I'm not even shit mom. And if a tub of slime tried to eat my baby or any of my dogs, I wouldn't let them out of my sight for weeks. And then when she comes home from her date, does she decide to just sit with Oscar the rest of the time? No, she puts on a flannel and she's reading a magazine in a separate room. It's like she wants Oscar kidnapped.
Thank you, Gene. See, Gene, you are prepared. You're prepared to be a dad. You're getting there.
That is not what prepares you to be a dad. I just want to make sure that you have lowered expectations.
Now, I've been doing the thing that prepares me to be a dad.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
That's to become a dad, not prepares you to be a dad.
You've been shooting your own ecto cooler. Oh yeah.
Vigo orders Janos to bring him a child to possess, and Janos chooses Oscar. Meanwhile, the Ghostbusters discover a river of slime running through the abandoned beach pneumatic transit system. Ray is attacked by the slime and accidentally breaks a pipe, causing a citywide blackout. The Ghostbusters are arrested and taken to court. Upon presentation of evidence, the slime sample responds physically to the judge's tirade against the Ghostbusters and then explodes, summoning the ghosts of the Scoleri brothers, whom he sentenced to death. The Ghostbusters capture the ghosts in exchange for a dismissal of the charges and the right to resume their business.
I had a really hard time with the painting in this movie, and so much of this movie rests on the painting. Because I don't know about y'all, but this looked like the guy who plays Walder Frey in Game of Thrones. He also plays Filch in Harry Potter. It's like they took him aged now, but figured out what he looked like back then. And it also appears that they took his head. And have y'all seen this thing that exists now, which I would have to break up with some immediately if this was the present they gave me. But you can send them like pictures of your significant other and they'll paint them like in a regal format. Yes. Like it'll look like a portrait, like if you lived like as like Victorian royalty or something like that.
Didn't Roger do something like that?
I did that. I did it myself. I didn't pay for it. I am a bit of a graphic artist. I did it myself, and I created Roger Roper, and I gave it to him for his birthday about 3 years ago. Yes.
Right, but you created that. Like, people are paying hundreds of dollars to do this, but it was like that company took this actor and made him look regal from another time period. And because of all of that, I just thought the painting was silly and unscary, and I thought that was a bummer because it's fun to have some scares with the humor. Like, think about the first one, the demon dogs. Like, there were things in it that were creepy and that gave that humor and scary a bit of a balance. And this one, there wasn't a balance at all. This one was not creepy. It was not scary. It was just silly.
That scene where the demon dog corners Lewis against the window at the restaurant and nobody cares, it terrified me as a child. But in defense of the Vigo painting, I ask you guys to name a more iconic movie painting. Maybe the Monet in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but I think you could show anyone who's seen Ghostbusters 2 this Vigo painting and they'll shout, Vigo! Like he's a character in the film before he utters a single word. And despite looking like fantasy Premier League hero Erling Haaland, the actor who plays Vigo, Wilhelm von Homburg, he's like a super fucked up individual, which I think makes him scary. His dad was a Nazi soldier who worked at Buchenwald Death Camp before they worked together as a wrestling tag team in California. And this guy, Wilhelm, the actor, he's accused of raping his stepmother, which may have meant that he was actually the father of the girl that he considers his half-sister. I think that evil comes through the screen.
Jesus.
Wow. I don't think anybody's physical appearance ever matched the way they live their life better than this guy.
He's the scourge of Carpathia.
He is. He's the living embodiment of the scourge of Carpathia.
I know this is blasphemy in 2022, but Bill Murray ruined Ghostbusters. Like, he's pretty much the star of this movie, and he's outdone by his supporting cast. Dan Aykroyd was better in Ghostbusters 2. Ramis, better in Ghostbusters 2. Weaver, Annie Potts, Ernie Hudson, Rick Moranis, they were all great in this movie. Even Vigo and Janos were more enjoyable characters than Peter Venkman. And I think it really is more the actor than the role. Imagine a Peter Venkman played by Jeff Goldblum or Rob Lowe. Like those guys as Peter Venkman, a little sex appeal, a little quirkiness. It's a better movie.
Yeah, and I think I normally would have taken Bill to task. We've done it before when he mails in a performance. He shows up. He is Bill Murray, who can be engaged on different levels, and you can tell it. And I normally would call him out on it, but here I'm going to kind of let him get a pass. I don't blame him. He must have checked out when he's reading the script and he gets to, a remote-controlled Statue of Liberty walking down the streets. At that point, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give him a pass. And that was so bad, Gene, that for over 20 years, he would not read another script, that he felt so angry about what had been done to them. Ghostbusters a hit. They're all having fun. They all go off, do their own projects. They bring them back together and pitch the sequel. And the pitch that they gave them was so off that what they finally ended up shooting, he said he felt that they lured them there under false pretenses. So he was angry. And the Ghostbusters 3 script he got in 2010, didn't even read it, shredded it, and sent it back to Ramis and to Aykroyd with a note: no one wants to pay money to see old fat men chase ghosts. So Bill, who mails shit in, I think he was right to do it in this case.
I think you both are crazy. I love Bill Murray, and I think that he's funny in this. I think he's one of the only people that I think is worth watching in most of the movies that he's in. And I thought he was no different in this than the first one. I thought his level of acting was the same as in the first one. Now, I will say, Annie Potts and Rick Moranis, they're fucking hilarious in these movies. And I think they're the best parts of these films. But no question, man, I think Murray is like a god. Now, in real life, I mean, he's an asshole. I think he probably was an asshole on set. My dad plays poker and he's played against him at the World Series of Poker a couple of times. And like you say, he's a total dick. Like, I don't think he's a nice guy, but I think he's fucking hilarious.
So when Matt commissioned this film, he really wanted us to compare it to the original along with seeing if it still holds up. And I got to say that one key part that felt parallel in each movie was the montage, right? The original Ghostbusters was not a great movie. I really did not care for it. But within it lives one of the most unforgettable music montages of the 80s. It's that song, Magic.
Yes.
By Mick Smiley. You got Slimer coming out of the hot dog cart. Sigourney Weaver's looking all sexy and possessed, and her hair is all crazy. And Rick Moranis is like stumbling around all disheveled with ghosts flying out of the subway. There's that zombie cab driver that like turns his head around and then like runs the cab through New York. Spirits zooming across the New York City skyline. Ghostbusters 2 tried to recapture that magic with 2 montages. Ghostbusters 2, you get double the montages, and it mostly did an okay job. We got like bad Ghostbusters TV commercials, some slime collection, Janine now looking fine as fuck. There's that mink coat coming to life, which was pretty fun. And then, of course, the Titanic arriving in port, looking better than the ship in James Cameron's Titanic. Which montage do you guys think is better, Ghostbusters 1 or Ghostbusters 2?
Oh, it's not even a question. The original. I can remember that whole montage, Gene, when they shut down the power grid and all the ghosts come out. It's an amazing sequence. It's great. This one, it was as if they took a whiteboard and dissected the original movie and wrote down, okay, what are the key points that worked? How can we replicate them? And this thing, it felt cheap. They're like, okay, we got to find some ridiculous forced hip hop tie-in. Oh, let's get Bobby Brown. And what I couldn't believe is the budget on this film compared to the original was so much higher, yet the ghosts somehow look worse.
Agreed.
They look less inspired. The production of them looks less quality. It felt completely rushed. We get, yes, the iconic, the Ghostbusters, they're running through the streets. Even in their eyes, you can see they're like, oh, God, what did I sign on for? They're almost embarrassed as they're doing it. But I have to ask, the new logo on the Ghostbusters station, on the on the car, on the ghost is holding up 2 fingers. This does not make sense in world unless maybe the Ghostbusters, the original company, the LLC was sued. They don't exist. And this is like some new company. But for them, are they living? Is this an in-world thing or do they know they're in a sequel?
I mean, obviously, this is not a smart enough movie that they know they're in a sequel, but it's like, he's like, peace. Like, it's like a peace sign It's not a 2.
It's a 2. It's Ghostbusters
Like
2.
we come in peace.
No, this is Ghostbusters 2. 2 fingers.
Well, I completely agree with Big D. I think 2 is doing that awful thing that so many sequels do, which is like they take the formula of what worked in the first and they just apply it again in the second one. And it feels like a ripoff of the same movie. Now, I will say it's enjoyable in bursts, right? Because you're like, oh, this is what we loved about it. Oh, this is a callback. But then if it just keeps going, it begins to feel really cheap. I mean, think about The Hangover and every movie that came after the first one. In some ways, and I know people are going to hate this, but even in some ways, Wayne's World 2. Like there's parts of Wayne's World 2 that are fun, but a lot of Wayne's World 2 is just that same thing all over again with Cassandra, and it's the same plot line that somebody's trying to steal her. And it's no good. The first is good, and if you're going to do a sequel, make it different, because if you don't, it just falls flat.
One night, the slime invades Dana's apartment, attacking her and Oscar. She seeks refuge with Peter, and they rekindle their relationship. The Ghostbusters discover the slime reacts to emotions and suspect it is amassed from the negative emotions of New Yorkers. Determining Vigo and the slime are connected, Egon, Ray, and Winston investigate the river of slime, but they are pulled in. They emerge at the museum and begin fighting each other until Egon realizes the slime's negative energy is influencing them.
Let's talk about Dana. So Big D, you talked about how she was a bad mom. I think Dana's just kind of a sad woman. I get Dana's attraction to Venkman. He's a guy that I've been with. He's cute. He's irreverent. He's funny. Sure. I get it. Hook up with him. Have a good time with him. No problem. Dana, I judge you not for that. But Dana, you got a kid now. You know that Venkman is not dad material. You know he's not coming in to be a daddy to your kid and that he's going to make some sweet little life with you and take care of your baby. So do better. And I was flipping to Big D's side here at this point because, like, again, go off and have fun, but don't bring him around your kid, Dana. Maybe she isn't the best mom out there.
She tried to do better. And then that dude dumped her. Like, maybe yes. Dana isn't really all that. Maybe she's not that good at cellist or an art restorer or a mom.
Yes.
Listen, 5 years ago, she spent time as Zool, looking like a New Order music video and ushering in Gozer. Like, life is all kind of downhill from there.
Yeah. I think the second that you see anything paranormal, you go to your parents' house in Montana. You leave New York. You don't stay there and have the Ghostbusters come out and take stool samples and try to clean out the apartment of spirits. You leave.
I can't believe that when she went to Peter's apartment for refuge, she fucking cleaned it while he was gone. I would be so offended if someone cleaned my house. I desperately want to clean other people's messy homes. When I go to someone's house and it's messy, like I can't sit still. And I don't mind. Like, I think I draw the line at like dishes. If a guest does their own dishes or makes their bed when they wake up, that's fine. But if they start organizing my things, that's hurtful.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm too OCD for someone else to come in. Like, I don't allow anybody in the house to clean but me and the person we pay to clean that yep. I had like an hour and a half long meeting with the first time to explain to them how I clean my house. Like, I'm that person. But I do understand the impetus because, like, I have a friend, very dear friend, and I told them ahead of time that I was going to say this on the podcast. Like, they're a hoarder. Yeah. They're just a hoarder, and not like a scary hoarder where there's like dead smushed cats in the house, but like they hoard stuff, and they have like stacks of newspapers, and their dining room table is covered in things, and they just can't get rid of anything. And every time I am at their house, I have to stop myself from organizing it or like pitching things. And last year, this very dear friend of mine got divorced and moved. And she asked me to help. And it was the toughest thing I've ever done to not just trash everything in sight. And I will let you know, there were like 4 trash bags worth of stuff that I like kind of brought to the dumpster and was like, I don't know where that went because I could not handle it at all.
Good.
The worst is when they have a house with multiple rooms and dedicated rooms to things, like there's a dining room or there's like a living room or a bedroom, and that room becomes unusable because the amount of stuff in there. I'm like, you've sacrificed an entire room to shit. Make it a storage room then. That's okay. You can store stuff in the storage room, but you have to organize it.
Well, and then they call it something stupid like, this is our catch-all room.
Wow. It's like a junk drawer, but a whole room.
Right. But it's a whole room. Or this is my craft room. And it's like, where the fuck you do crafts in here? Because there's like a skein of yarn. This is not a craft room, friend.
But Ash, I got to ask this question, like lower my voice here. Is it some kind? Is it being dishonest to your spouse if bags like that disappear?
No, because if it is, then I've been lying for 10 years now.
Okay,
because
I
I very frequently will go and like clean out Tom's side of the room.
Okay,
and
good.
So we used to sleep. Okay, this is how crazy I am. Let's
nobody tweet this or anything. Don't say
let's see. Ashley's crazy. We used to sleep on opposite sides of the bed, and we switched so that he could sleep on the side of the bed closest to the wall, so I couldn't see the floor when I walked in the room because I couldn't handle how messy his side of the bed was. So we didn't get divorced. He had to move to the other side of the bed so he could keep that side messy, and it's blocked by. And I'm not super tall, so like I can't see over all the way onto the other side of the bed. And so periodically I'll go over there with a trash bag and just clean stuff. And he's like, hey, have you seen this? I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I wonder where that went. You know where it went? It went to the fucking donation ferry. And the donation ferry is the fucking dump down the street. Okay.
Awesome.
That's where it went. Because you didn't need it.
Oh, good. I didn't want to feel bad about myself.
No, it doesn't spark joy. Get rid of it.
Yeah. So Gene, I'm eager to hear here. You in the past have made comments about children because you are the childless member of the podcast, but I'm curious to hear what you think about kids being used in comedies. Because for me, even though I have a child, I can't stand where kids are like the major prop, where you get like Look Who's Talking 1, 2, or 3, or Baby's Day Out, or Three Men and a Baby, Baby Genius, Baby Boom, all the baby movies, right? Kids are cute, but when you put them in as a prop and they make stupid faces or they react to adult situations in a surprisingly mature way, or it's just like jokes about the parents misplacing them, or, oh, where'd Junior go? And then he's out on a ledge, walking around your apartment. To me, I think it's lazy comedy, and I don't enjoy it even as a parent.
Yeah, my favorite baby performance was in Trainspotting, if that gives you any idea.
That is the worst joke you have ever made on this podcast.
Listen, I'm famously uncomfortable with babies. They seem fragile. I don't know what they understand. They're kind of boring. People get excited when they do just mundane shit.
But what about Raising Arizona? I'm thinking about that now. I'm kind of okay with the baby in that.
Yeah, that baby's all right. And like Macaulay Culkin and Uncle Buck was pretty good, but he's not a baby at that point. He's a child, right? Yeah.
Babies don't do anything. They're just good to lay there and to smell them. Babies smell good.
I think that if the baby's used as a prop and not the star of the show, I'm kind of okay with it. Like Ghostbusters 2 exposed me to a whole new way to interact with babies, and that was talking shit to them. And I thought that this is where Bill Murray actually did his best, is when he was just talking shit to Oscar. Like Venkman calls Oscar ugly and smelly, and he just insults him throughout the movie. And that put a smile on my face. I didn't know if that's like, okay, like, is that abusing a child if you're talking shit to them? Because I do that to dogs, right? And I think that that's going to be my way to relate to babies if I ever interact with one.
No, but I think Venkman, that's a moment of honesty, because Oscar is an ugly baby.
Yes.
And I feel bad for what happened to the actor who played him. He ended up having some kind of mental disorder, took his own life very young. But the child was an ugly baby. He really was. And I like the fact that Venkman called it. And for me as a parent, I try to speak to Emma as if she's an adult. I don't make sounds or like baby talk. I don't talk about topics necessarily that she shouldn't be prepared for. But I think if you just talk to kids, honestly, it toughens them up a bit. So I think it's okay that he's talking to Oscar like this.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as like talking, they understand nothing. I mean, I used to talk to my kids when they were babies, and I would say it in a nice way, be like, oh my God, I'm up again. Isn't this wonderful? They said you wouldn't ruin my life, but it feels that way. Yes. I guess we'll all cry together. Like, I mean, I used to say shit like that to my kids. And also, I mean, like, we've got to normalize the ugly baby. Nothing drives me crazier than when like people are like, it's the most beautiful baby because it's a new life. Some babies are ugly. Ellie was a gorgeous baby. Finn was an ugly baby because he was born really early alien, he looked like a stretched out piece of foreskin. Like, I mean, that's what he looked like when he was born. Like, he had like loose skin all over his body and like he was splotchy. He looked weird, but I loved him. And he grew into a really cute kid. But like, you know, there's ugly babies out there. And yes, Big D, you talk to them about adult things and you answer their questions. Guys, there's nothing more awful than leaving a kid repressed, because that's how they go out and do drugs and get, you know, pregnant at 15. You answer their questions.
And please do not give cute little baby names for genitalia.
Oh yeah, like the pee-pee and the poo-poo.
Your little
The
dinky
little
poo.
whispering eye.
Am I allowed to do that when I don't have a child?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who are you doing that with? The other kids? Or are you talking about like the Sarah? Like, Sarah, come here and touch my wee-wee.
Right before he releases his ectoplasm. He's like, my pee-pee's gonna get the ectoplasm.
Oh, my wee-wee. Oh, cross the streams. Yay.
The Ghostbusters tell the mayor of their discoveries, but are dismissed. His assistant, Jack Hardemeyer, has them committed to a psychiatric hospital to protect the mayor's political interests. A spirit kidnaps Oscar, and Dana pursues them into the museum, which is then covered with impenetrable slime. On New Year's Eve, the slime rises to the streets, causing widespread supernatural chaos. Discovering Hardemeyer's actions, the mayor fires him and has the Ghostbusters released.
So another thing, we've talked about babies that were big in the 80s and 90s. Another thing that seemed to be comedy gold in the 80s and 90s was if you would get somebody who was like maybe Eastern European, non-distinct, flamboyant, random. They would have some kind of job, like they would be the curator of an art museum where Dana worked, or Father of the Bride. We had Frank and the way he talks and planning the wedding. Or Beverly Hills Cop, you have Serge, who's the art gallery salesman. We remember those characters because of the uniqueness of them, but they're not, I don't think, inherently funny. I think the movie suffers because of Janos. They didn't need him there, and he was just something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way throughout the movie.
But he's so good at it. Like, I get that it's an overplayed trope. I do. But this is where it does work. And this is why it became a trope, is because when it works, it's really funny. And this guy's hilarious. And I was surprised at how funny I thought he was, because this actor, he would later go on to play like the weirdest and most off-putting character, in my opinion, on Ally McBeal, a show that I loved, but I hated his character. And I've always linked him to that show. But in this role, like his hair, his body language, the way he flips his wrists when he talks, like he is by far the best addition in this movie.
I agree. Janos is more than just a funny accent. He's taking it to another level. Peter McNichol looks so uncomfortable all the time. It's like he's wincing through the strain of trying to be charming. And I can't get enough of it. It's utterly hilarious. It's my favorite aspect of Ghostbusters 2. Other than that Bobby Brown cameo.
Yeah, those the Ghostbusters. But as the movie now is steamrolling to an inevitable end, we get not only something that feels redundant, something that feels like a direct copy. There's a section or a turn in the movie that I think you could interchange with the original Ghostbusters and almost nobody would know. In the original, we get the scene where the Ghostbusters now, you have to find a way to pull them out of New York City, get them off to the side and sidelined while the ghosts go crazy. In the original Ghostbusters, you had where they go to the mayor's office, nobody believes them, they put them in jail. In this one, it's basically the same thing. They go to the mayor's office, but instead now the mayor's his right-hand man now gets them committed, and they're doing the same conversation they had before, trying to convince the doctors or the staff that another giant character is going to come walking down the streets of Manhattan. And I just wish that Ramis and Aykroyd, they had taken some time. I understand you want to strike while the iron's hot. The studio had a massive hit. They figure, we kind of rushed the first one. Maybe it'll work again. But please, they just should have stopped for a second and said, is there something original in this story, or is it just repackaging what we've seen before?
Yeah, I know that the all-girls Ghostbusters with Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig, like, I know it got a lot of flack, but that's something I actually really enjoyed about it. It had a really original approach to this kind of world and the storytelling, and the ending of that movie I thought was actually a lot of fun because of how different it was, and they paid just enough, like, little hints toward the original to not feel like regurgitation. Here, this is nothing but regurgitation. And as we've already talked about, like, doing something the second time, it actually sometimes even cheapens it in the original movie.
Yeah.
Like, it even makes the original movie seem less clever because it just feels derivative.
Well, the Ghostbusters use slime charged with positive emotions to animate and pilot the Statue of Liberty.
So dumb. So dumb.
At the museum, the slime barrier partially recedes due to the positive emotions, and the Ghostbusters use the statue's torch to break through the ceiling, stopping Vigo from possessing Oscar. Then they repel through the ceiling and neutralize Janos with positive slime. Vigo takes on physical form and recaptures Oscar. The gathered crowds outside begin singing a chorus of Auld Lang Syne, and their positivity weakens Vigo, sending him back to the painting and freeing the Ghostbusters. Vigo possesses Ray, but the Ghostbusters use their weapons to free him and defeat Vigo. Okay.
Why couldn't they? Did nobody have this reaction in the room while they were reading the script, Gene? The reaction the three of us have had when you get here, the Ghostbusters use slime charged with positive emotions to animate and pilot the Statue of Liberty.
But if your target audience is a 9-year-old Gene Lyons, this works. Because as a kid from New York, I was stoked to see the Statue of Liberty come to life and save the day. That was awesome. As an old man, my cynical mind has so many issues with the strategy to penetrate the slime covering the museum and stop Vigo. First of all, you know there are tunnels underneath the museum. You've been in them. So why not dig your way in? Secondly, how long does it take to prep a statue for battle? I mean, we're talking like ent-moot slowness of mobilization, right? They just happen to have slime blasters and a PA and a Nintendo Advantage controller sitting in the Ecto-1. And finally, the worst part is that the physics are all wrong. So the deepest point between Liberty Island and Manhattan is 62 feet deep. The Statue of Liberty is 300 feet tall. She wouldn't even be neck deep in the water. The streets couldn't hold her moving weight. There would be destruction in the city of Godzilla proportions, arguably worse than the slime at the museum.
But what gets me is, besides the fact that she's a thin like layer of copper and that she would disintegrate the second you try to break her feet free from the pedestal, how is no New Yorker like upset that at the end she's laying in the street like a carcass? Like you're going to do a chalk outline where, yay, everybody, yay, the ghost is gone. But the statue, it's your family member. Your mother is laying in the street dead. And nobody says, hey, wait, fuck those Ghostbusters. My dad's right. They are assholes. They killed the Statue of Liberty.
They don't know what's going on with the slime at the museum. They're like, the museum's covered in slime. These guys showed up and killed the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
That's it, yes.
No context. And also the effects look really bad. I know we have to judge the effects from the time period, so I'll leave that alone. But also, like, think about the cleanup. Like, it's just laying there. It needs to be moved. And that thing is so massive. I'm thinking about the movie The Day After Tomorrow. Finn has been on this huge, like, disaster film kick. And so we've been watching, like, Armageddon and Deep Impact. And we watched The Day After Tomorrow. And in that, the Statue of Liberty's head gets, like, washed into, you know, the city. And they did a really good job of showing to scale how fucking large that head would be on a street in New York, and how it would knock down entire buildings as it got pushed through because of how big just the head was. And so we went about lawsuits. Like, I mean, this is a massive lawsuit because it's going to cause like sinkholes all throughout lower Manhattan.
Also, did they test what song might animate the statue? Did they just happen to land upon "Your love is lifting me higher"? Was there anything else that they had tried?
Yeah, they did establish earlier in the film that it responds particularly well to Jackie Wilson in the toaster scene.
Okay, so there was no dry run. They didn't know if maybe the statue would just hop around, bing, bong, bing, and then fall in the water.
Well, no, they had the Nintendo Advantage controller. Everything was going to be fine.
Well, and I have to say, I know we've been laughing, but it must be said out loud. The ending of this movie was such a letdown because so much of the action, first of all, just kind of piles on top of itself. Like it becomes like really frenetic, really messy because it's just kind of building in no united way. And then I'm like, okay, well, I can buy this. And then we find out a song saves them. Like, a song. And I'm just going, like I'm groaning on my, sofa watching. And I had no idea that this was going to be, the ending of Elf, where like if we all just can sing in harmony, Santa can fly his sleigh, or that great parody moment in The Cabin in the Woods where the Japanese children defeat the demon by gathering around it and singing a song while holding hands. Like all of a sudden that's where we are. Ugh, total letdown.
This ending was garbage. First, nobody knows the words to Auld Lang Syne. I just want to point that out. And despite being a terrific movie prop, Proton Pack sort of went all Sonic Screwdriver in this movie. I was like, what, they're just going to blast him and that's going to be okay? Now the Proton Pack can solve any problem. You need to capture a ghost? They got it. You want to remove a spirit from a possession? That's fine. Art restoration? You got it. Like crossing streams in Ghostbusters 1, that was acceptable. This is fucking over the top.
Can we please discuss the painting? We've already said how great Vigo and memorable that one was. I did not remember this final new incarnation of the shirtless Ghostbusters who
It's
are now,
cute.
they've been doing PX90 or P9, whatever that thing is. They've been doing CrossFit. They're all ripped. They're younger and there's a baby. How do you explain this even in the movie?
I think it's cute.
No, you don't.
Yeah, it was fine. I was fine with, after they fucking sang a song to end the day, the painting wasn't the least of my worries.
And also, anyone who's done New Year's in Times Square, there's a bunch of angry drunks after midnight. Okay, I think that maybe that would have re-energized the negative slime. Vigo comes back, and I don't think it would have been a positive everybody's hugging, because that's not the way New Year's goes down after midnight on the 1st.
Big D, you were so high on drugs. How do you even fucking remember how New Year's goes down in midnight?
I was doing my Matrix moves. I was dodging punches when we got kicked off the train. I knew it. I was smart.
Sounds like positive vibes to me. Now it's time in the podcast we give our Shat score. Our Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes out of respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is owning an occult bookstore in 1989 New York City where you can hang out with Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis while wearing a comfy sweater. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is excitedly booking pop phenom Bobby Brown to record your sequel's hit anthem, only to see him subsequently charged with disorderly conduct, a nightclub beating, battery, DUI, sexual battery, violating probation, and owing back child support. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Ghostbusters 2?
I didn't love it. I think the original Ghostbusters, total flash in the pan. I thought it was fun, good comedy. In parts, it was creepy. I still think Sigourney Weaver's hot. We didn't talk about that a lot, but I still think she looks really great in this movie. But one just wasn't repeatable. It wasn't meant to be repeated. And this is the problem I have with Hollywood is some movies, it's okay to just have one movie. Like it's okay for the story to stop there. And I personally believe that is what should have happened with the Ghostbusters franchise. For me, this is a solid 1.5 wipes for the first one. I think that's a great movie. This one, though, I'm going 3.5.
Ash, I got to disagree because I think Ghostbusters 2 is better than Ghostbusters 1, and I think the animated series, Real Ghostbusters, was better than any of them. The plot is far-fetched, yes. It is more family-friendly, yes. But I feel like with Ghostbusters 2, they built enough furniture and distractions around Peter Venkman to reduce the absolute garbage that Bill Murray brought to this series. I'm definitely going to do a rewatch of Ghostbusters in ultra high def to rethink my 3.5 wipe score for that, because this all feels horribly wrong in my head. Like in my head, Ghostbusters should be better. So maybe it's just that I saw this in ultra high def and that had something to do with it. But for the time being, my Ghostbusters 2 score is definitely 3.25 wipes, and I will revisit my original Ghostbusters score.
Love it.
Gene, do you know what you gave the original Ghostbusters?
3.5 wipes.
Correct. I gave it
Just
a 2.5. I feel like it's a better movie. I feel like this makes me appreciate Ghostbusters more. But this movie, it made me angry. I felt like we deserved something better. You shouldn't come out with a sequel to a much beloved movie without giving it the time to develop a story that's worth it and the respect that the fans deserve. Because frankly, Murray and Weaver and Aykroyd, they deserved better. The fans deserved better. And this is what we always talk about, the classic waste of potential. The studio, yes, rushed them, but the fact that they were major chunks of the movie that ended up on the cutting room floor and that they had to do rewrites and reshoots tell you at some point they should have taken a pause and said, should we think about what we're doing? And I think the years that it took to get to the afterlife, the part 3, I was okay with that. I thought that was a good ending. They'd spend some time in developing it. But for me, this is a 3.5 wipe movie. This is pretty bad.
All right, with 3.5 wipes from Big D and Ash and 3.25 wipes from me, that gives us an average wipe score of 3.416 repeating wipes for Ghostbusters 2.
Okay, that now ties it, Gene, in the 243 spot with Valley Girl, Repo Man, Iron Eagle, Kindergarten Cop, Dune, and Nightmare on Elm Street.
That oddly sounds right.
Yeah, it really does.
Just wait. It is slightly better than Masters of the Universe, Twister, and Porky's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
All right, with a couple minutes left in the podcast, I do want to get some voicemail that's been waiting. We have voicemail and email aplenty that will be sprinkling out over the next couple weeks. We're just getting so much. Thank you guys so much for writing in at host@shatthemovies.com and visiting us at shatpod.com using the SpeakPipe feature to leave us voice messages. Big D, if we could, let's get started with the voicemail.
Hello, Shat Crew. It is Eric C. I wanted to lay some speaker pipe because I listened to the Christine pod a few days ago and was super pumped to hear my name mentioned. I had never seen Christine, and when I watched it prior to the release of the episode, I was surprised to see Keith Gordon as Arnie and immediately recognized him as the guy from Back to School. As mentioned, I have commissioned that, and it's coming up in January of 2023. In my letter about my thoughts about Back to School, I mentioned that I wasn't a fan of his character, but you'll read that soon enough. Oh, and I just watched Defending Your Life last night, as it was one of my favorite films growing up, and it is coming up soon on your schedule. To me, it has a similar ethereal feel as LA Story, but still much different. If you could give it a good wipe score, I'll bring you 9 pies. You'll get that joke after seeing the movie. Anyway, keep up the great work.
Saw the movie. Don't care for the joke, Eric, but thank you so much for giving us Back to School because I'm very, very excited to do that. It's one of my childhood favorites. Probably the movie that was watched the most in our household when I was a kid. And if you did listen to the Defending Your Life episode, you'll know we were not kind.
Mm-mm.
Thanks for your voicemail, Eric. Next up, we have one from James in Woodstock, Illinois.
Hey, Shat Crew. This is James, coming from the infamous Woodstock, Illinois, home of many filming locations for the legendary movie Groundhog's Day, which I live mere minutes from the square. I've been listening to your podcast for about 1.5 years now. I've gotten into a lot of episodes, but that's besides the point. So I wanted to just comment on the Full Metal Jacket episode, but before that, I just wanted to say, after listening to the most recent podcast about Reservoir Dogs, which continues to be, in my opinion, the best Tarantino film ever. Sorry, guys. And I just have to say, Big D commented on how he hasn't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Well, I got to say, trust me, dude, you will love it. Go watch it. But anyways, back to Full Metal Jacket. Gene was saying how so many industrial bands had sampled this movie, and me being an industrial fan for probably almost 30 years now, I have to let you guys get in on a couple of songs that really heavily sampled the movie, and I think that you think would be awesome. So the first song has to be a song called This Is My Rifle by Combi Christ. And the ultimate song, in my opinion, is a song called Skull Fuck by Modulate. The band is called Modulate. Go on YouTube, look it up. Gene, I know you will totally dig this tune. Please check it out for me. I love you guys and love everything that you're doing and love your take on these movies. Keep doing what you're doing. It's so great. So take care and talk to you later. Bye-bye.
James, I have three things to say about this. One, you do know me so well because I love these songs. Two, we probably ran into each other at Neo at some point in Chicago and just never knew it. So I got to know if you were ever at Neo in Chicago, because 2007, 2008 were the years where I haunted that place like 3 or 4 times a week. And three, thank you so much for calling in with your voice, because when people say that Ash and I don't sound goth when we're hosting this pod, this is what goth industrial people sound like. Okay. We're enthusiastic. We're exuberant. We're very opinionated. And I just love everything about this voicemail.
And I also just love the positivity. Like, I feel like it's like my parents aren't big fans of our podcast because we curse so much. And it feels like I've like been like, like given some positivity that I needed, that we can continue to do what we're doing. That was awesome. Great songs too, by the way.
Thanks, James, for your voicemail. Moving on to email, we've got a couple. Ash, if you do the honors.
So first we have one from Mike Vincent, and this actually came to us on Facebook, and he's writing about The Breakfast Club. It says, "Hey, Shat Crew, big fan of the podcast. I love listening to your thoughts and opinions on some of my favorite movies. Big D always makes me laugh. Gene makes me think. Damn it, Gene. Ash is a breath of fresh air, and Roger is just too much. Generally, I think your assessments are pretty fair. Not Willow. I'm sorry. I had something in my throat. I've been listening for a while and have not had a chance to make my own commission, but soon I hope. Anyway, I'm writing you tonight in regards to The Breakfast Club. I'm sitting here watching The Breakfast Club, and I had a thought. Maybe because I'm a little bit baked and slightly intoxicated, but I'm going to just throw out a very unpopular opinion, possibly so. Bender is not the scum-sucking piece of trash, horrible person that everyone makes him out to be when pointing out what's wrong with The Breakfast Club. He is, in fact, the internal monologue of everyone. He says what we all want to say, but are too nervous or scared to. He calls out every high school clique, subverts expectations, stands up to, and questions authority. He is us. All of us. He is that little voice in our head that goes off when we get pissed or ticked off or what have you, and wish we could just unload on whoever and tell them what we really think. But societal politeness tells us we can't. But he does. Anyway, that's all for that. Keep up the great work, you guys. Look forward to the next episode, but seriously, Willow was awesome. And I don't know how you guys can give it that score, but I still love you. And that comes from Mike Vincent on Facebook.
I don't completely know if I agree that Bender is saying everything that the audience is thinking. He loathes himself. Bender wants to be the cool kid. Bender wants to join them. When he gets the earring from Claire, he is so happy. He's getting what he wanted. So I don't know that he's truly just the audience saying the things that are obvious. I think he's kind of a sad example of a character.
I disagree. I think Bender is like the only normal one out of all of them, because Bender like recognizes how completely screwed up the entire world is, and he recognizes it early. I think we all knew that one person, or were that one person in high school that like recognized that like life kind of never is going to have any meaning to it, no matter how much meaning we try to place on it. And so like, he's fucked up early. He and Ali Sheedy, they're the best parts of that movie.
Well, thanks, Mike, for your message on Facebook. Big D, what movie do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, a telesales operative becomes disillusioned with his existence and begins to hunger for a fresh excitement in his new life. As he experiences a new awakening of the senses, his wife and daughter also undergo changes that seriously affect their family. Critically acclaimed, this film won Oscars for Best Screenplay, Director, Best Actor, and Best Film. Commissioned by Lucas Yu. Came out in 1999, and this will be a very interesting one for us to look back on.
I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Thank you, Lucas, for your commission. And thank you, Matt, for commissioning Ghostbusters 2. Thank you to all of our commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Gothic Match, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
Morning, Jim.
Morning, Carolyn.
I love your tie, that color.
Nice going, Dad.
Ricky? Coming, Dad.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
We're having everyone write out a job description. That way management can assess who's valuable and who's expendable.
My parents are trying to take an active interest in me. Why can't they just have their own lives?
I'm so proud of you. You didn't screw up once.
Oh my god, it says Psycho next door.
Jane, what if he worships you?
I didn't mean to scare you. I'm not obsessing. I'm just curious.
Why does he dress like a Bible salesman?
Today I quit my job, and then I blackmailed my boss for almost $60,000 past the asparagus.
Your dad's actually kind of cute. I think he and your mother have not slept together in a long time.
Shut up!
You think you're the only one who's frustrated.
I'm not? Well then, come on, baby, I'm ready.
Welcome to America's weirdest home videos.
This is for your own good, boy. There are rules in life.
Yes, sir. Don't give up on me, Dad. Smile! You're at Mr. Smiley's.
You are so busted.
I love shooting this gun!
Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it.
I rule.
If I had to leave tonight, would you come with me?
Yes.